document down there. That's where I pulled that all together. It's down on the taskbar too. She's multitasking. You ever tried to run a computer and run a baby at the same time? All right. Well, we've been in the Diggin series for the last 3 weeks. You know, it's still okay. If you wanna look up your admin and say, I dig it. I dig it. I mean, it might help me to even get to the fact where I feel like you're engaged with me. I dig it. Jeff, you dig it?
Oh, yeah.
I dig it too. I dig it. And so part 3 is this: we're still digging. We're still digging ditches. We was digging them last week. Before that, we was digging wells. Remember we was digging wells. The Philistines come by and stopped off the wells. It wasn't our own wells. It was wells of our fathers, or it was the wells of God's resources, and they stopped them off. But we decided we was going to dig them out. And we tried to dig our own wells, but it didn't work. So we just redug those, and they worked. The water came out of them. So we realized that that's the kind of wells to dig. And then we come from digging wells and getting the dirt out over to digging ditches. And we tried to get down to the valley, but we never made it there last week. And I'm going to recap that journey for just a second, bring us to that place, and then we'll dive into what God wants for us today. But last week we looked at we started what's going on here. You know what? Can you all see that? Can you stretch that a little bit? You think? Oh, I love that. That's great. Handy touch screen. Yeah. Oh, now I'm digging it. You all digging it? I'm digging it. Okay. Can you all see fine? You are good. Okay. So we looked at what is going on here, and we seen. And I'm not going to spend much time, but we seen that one king, the king of the Moabites, had quit paying tribute to the king of Israel. And the king of Israel was wroth about it and said, oh, he ain't going to do that. And so he tried to gather up the king of Judah, and then eventually the king of Edom to come together. And those 3 kings were going to go down to Moab and fight against Moab for his rebellion. Okay? Now, before I move to the next thing, here's the deal. God don't care. All right? There's some things that God just does not care about. And God, I am sure of, did not care that the Moabite king quit paying tribute to the king of Israel so he could have his little whatever, because he's kind of remember he's eccentric. That means he's rich and crazy. And so God didn't care that the king of Moab quit paying tribute to the king of Israel. I'm sure of it. But there are some things that God did care about. And those are going to come out in the end. And that was that Moab represented oppression of the enemy. And God wasn't going to allow oppression of the enemy. He was going to stop that. And if the king of Moab, where it was coming from, then that's where God was going to step in. And so God didn't care about the fact that the king of Israel wasn't getting his sheep. God cared about the issue of oppression of the enemy. And so, what's going on here? Well, that's what's going on. So they gather up to go down. Okay, let's scroll down. Keep right on rolling. All right, and then once we jumped on the journey, and we seen that they gathered up, and the king of Israel said, how are we going to make this happen? And the king of Judah said, well, we're going to go down through the wilderness of Edom. And so they went through the wilderness of Edom, and some scholars said they got turned around and they got lost in the wilderness, and so they're there for I think 7 days. Yeah, 7 days they're lost in the wilderness, and in the middle of it they ran out of water. And now not only are they not getting down to where they're going, but now they don't have any supply. They're out on the journey, they don't have supply. And so the king of Israel gets dramatic and says, we're all going to die. We're just going to die out here. God's done this to us. We're going to die. And remember, the problem with him was, and I'm trying to hurry through this so we can be all on the same page. The problem with him was, somewhere in the middle of trying to mix God with all this other stuff, he forgot God's character. And so he didn't understand God's character anymore. And in the middle of it, he lost being able to hear the will of God. And so when he didn't have those 2 things, well, then he's just making suppositions, presuppositions. And he said, we're all going to die. Well, that wasn't what God was doing. And so we're on the journey. Now, scrolling down, and then we come to the place where, well, if we're on the journey and we're having issues and we're running out of water, we're going to have a solution. Scoot us on down just a little bit. And in the solution, we see this. King of Israel, he's all mixed up in the head. Now, don't throw too mixed up. There might be some time in this journey toward heaven that you get a little mixed up in the head. But thank the Lord that there was... Now, the king of Edom ain't even mentioned. He don't even come into play as far as saving the air and day. But there is the king of Judah, Jehoshaphat, and he says this. He says there is a prophet, that, or the Lord is with this prophet that the king of Israel's servant had mentioned. And so what we've got here is we got the solution. One man, Jeroboam, or Jehoshaphat, remembered that God's presence was there. And they turned, and the three kings went that direction. And so that was the solution, to turn it back to God because it was too hard for them. To turn in that direction. So we see the solution, and then we roll on down, and we see that even though we had a solution, let's scroll on down so we can catch the rest of that. Okay, I guess that's it. All right, so things got weird. Even though, thank you, yeah, there it is. It's on the next page. Even though we got the solution, now I'm hurrying through because this is just a recap, okay? Even though we got the solution, things still got weird. Don't forget that. And just because you got the solution and you're doing what's right and you're trying, don't mean things are not going to get weird sometimes. They are. We're going to get weird, awkward. Things are going to blow up. Things are going to mess up. You're going to get dirt on your face. You know, it's just going to happen. But they didn't quit even though things got weird. Okay. Now, and here's where we came to last week, and we finished here, and that was clearing the air. There had to be a moment of clearing the air. Remember, things got weird because the prophet stepped out on the front porch and said, "Look here, dude. I don't know what you're doing here, but I don't even want to see you. I don't even want to look at you." And in case you're just wondering, even go back and read the King James. I mean, he said, "I wouldn't even notice you. I wouldn't even look your ear if it wasn't for this guy over here. If it wasn't for Jehoshaphat being here with you, I wouldn't even talk to you." And so it's getting awkward and it's got weird. And things got hard and tough. You ever have those moments where things just get hard and tough even though you're trying to do something good for Jesus, you know? And things is tough and hard and so it's locked up. And then almost the prophet said this. He said, "Bring me a minstrel." He said, "Bring me somebody to play music. Bring me a musician." And so they brought him a musician, and the musician began to play. And the Bible said that then, after the musician played, that the hand of the Lord came on the prophet. Okay? It was a change of atmosphere. Remember? We looked into the change of atmosphere. Now, I like to visit that for just a moment before we move on today. Remember, we're still digging ditches. We're headed down to the valley. We're going to get involved in this thing. But before we go on, I would like to spend a moment clearing the air. Because I feel like last week we had been going so long that when we come to it, we really was about done. You know, and so I just had to lay a few things out there real fast that you might have mistaken for a few jabs. Okay? A few jabs against don't listen to the wrong kind of music. Or a few jabs against don't go to the wrong places. Or involve yourself with the wrong kind of people. You know, you might have thought it was just a few little short strokes. And so I don't want to leave it there. You know, that's not fair for you or me or Scripture to just leave it there. Because there is something definite and rich and wonderful about the fact that getting the right atmosphere made a difference. And it cleared the air, and it brought the hand of God on the prophet in the middle of a stressful situation, in the middle of hardship, in the middle of trouble. I mean, here these kings stand, and they have exhausted everything they've got. They are there, and they can't go back. They can't go back now because they put it all in, and they spent it all there, and there they stand. Broken. Now, you can say the king of Israel's whatever, but he's still in it, man. He's still down in the middle of it. He's spent all, and there he is. He don't got an option. The prophet tried to send him back. And he said, "I can't go back. This has got to work. I'm here." He said, even if my head ain't caught where my heart is, I'm all in this thing. I'm here. Even if I don't understand. But here's what I want us to do. I want us to, Esther, just play something. Just play something good about Jesus. I'm putting her on the spot, and it's okay. She's very tough. I just want you to know that. She's very tough. Just something good. Something about Jesus. Can you hear that? Am I the only one hearing that? Is that just in my head? You guys can hear that too. You notice what that done? Instantly. Now stop. See? Are y'all getting it? Now let's go again. Let's move on to that anyway. Let's do that next. You see what that does? It changed the atmosphere instantly. That's the reason that it's so important that that when you come into here during the week, that there's these instrumentals playing in the background. You know, that's why. Because it sets the atmosphere. This isn't Arby's. You know what I mean? This isn't Starbucks. This isn't Starlight Coffee. And when I go around there, those girls are like, hello, Mac. You know, because it's right across from work. And they said, how are you doing? I said, well, I'd be about $32 richer a week if I didn't look at you. But it's not those places. Because it's here. It's this. It's this. You know, even if I don't understand all the words to that, you know where that's anchored? That's anchored in Christ. It's anchored in God. And all at once it shifts the atmosphere, that direction. All at once things start happening. It starts drawing us in. You know, your mind can be woo over there, and my mind be woo back here. And yours, well, you're pretty steady. But you know, some of the rest of us were woo shooting over there and shooting over there. But somehow it reels us in. And I want to say it arrests us, but that sounds bad. There's nothing bad about this. This is good. It captivates us. It pulls our attention in, and it holds us to that place. If just for a moment, it pulls us together, changes the atmosphere. And they needed a change of atmosphere. And now they're soaking up because in a minute she's going to quit. One of the guys came to me at the end of work the other day, and I was washing up Elvin. And on the other side of the wall, one of our guys, and this is just some wild music. I mean, it's like, boom, it's hard to even think about that playing, ain't it? It's like, wow, 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 you know, he's rocking out. You can't even take it to back because we've got an overlaid atmosphere. So we just come right back to it, thank the Lord. But it's rocking out back there. You know, I got my earbuds in or whatever, my speaker right up in under the hood with me or up in the wherever or under the truck. But one of the guys came and said, oh man, we got a soundtrack. And I'm like, okay, you know, because he's excited about it. And okay, you know, before I even thought, I said, listen, I got so much anxiety going on in my life, I don't need I don't need no I just don't because I'm already pretty anxious anyway. Oh. And then would have been Friday evening, last couple hours. I had listened to, just a little more. And we are loving. Y'all liking that? I'm liking that, aren't you? Isn't that good? Just breathe it in. We're okay. I mean, even if we don't get to digging today, that's okay. We'll just park right here, right? We'll come back and dig another time. Y'all are gonna laugh at me a little bit, but remember the other week we talked about the whole love song thing. Now, love songs was no go for me till lately, until I got married. So the other evening, man, I listened to K-Love till I was just sick of it. You know, they kept, by now they're just saying the same thing. You know, I listened to soul music, Brooklyn Tabernacle, and those type of things till I'm just done. You know, I've done it all week. I listened to Southern Gospel till it's all sounding the same to me. And so, back when it was Esther's birthday, I had Micah to get on Amazon Music and pull me some good country love songs together, okay? Clean stuff, and put them all in a playlist for me for Esther's birthday. Because me and her was going to go, you know, out and do something. I was going to take her somewhere, and I was going to play that playlist. You know, you guys, it's all right, you can borrow that. And so Micah had done that for me, and I had saved it. Amazon Music had just saved that as a playlist. Well, I was tired of everything the other day. And so the last couple hours when I pulled Amazon Music up, I thought, oh, there's that playlist. So I just hit it. Right up in, and I didn't have my earbuds in. I had my Bluetooth speaker up in the box of this Stendhal strip with me, and I'm wiring up lights. And I had it a little bit going, and I'm like, yeah, well, the longer I listen, guess what? I just get up. I know, everybody comes by, you know, they're looking up in that box, because that is not the norm for me, you know. And so guys are, looking by, and I'm like, sunny and 75, you know, or something crazy. Or the house won't fall if the bones are good, you know. Just jam out. And so, but let me tell you, and listen, I'm not just telling that to tell you that, but all the guys look at it, I'm just not, just smile away, boys, and I'm just working on, and we got the music rolling. But I want you to know what happened to me. I was about 3, and by about 5, or somewhere on the 4-ish, you know what? I was ready to clean up, wash up, you know, get out my uniform, get in my casuals, jump in, grab my lunchbox, jump in my car, and go straight home and give my wife sugar. I was just ready. Because listening to that music all that time, and I am going somewhere, I promise, listening to that music set the atmosphere for me. And I thought, I love her so much, I just want to go home and squeeze her. Yes. It works. It's good. And you tell me, you say, Brother Matthew, I just can't get feeling spiritual during the week. I feel like I'm just beat all to pieces. Well, I'll make some suggestions. Start listening to some music about it. Grab your phone, instead of looking at Facebook, pull up YouVersion. If you don't know how to get it, come see me. I'll show you how to download it, because it will read it to you if necessary. And you get real desperate, you can let it read to you while you read along with it. Pull it up on your phone. You know, instead of taking a smoke break, take an out-back break, read a little scripture, look up to heaven and say, God, I feel 1,000,000 miles away. Push the instrumental hymn button on and pray for 5 minutes. I guarantee you he will meet you this week if you go looking for him. That's good preaching, brother. Thank you so much. Set the atmosphere on purpose. I mean, people want to fall in love, they put the love songs on, don't they? People want to go, crazy, pull their own hair out, they put the rock and roll go-go on. And if you want to find him, turn the music on about him. And it don't even matter to me, you know, pick your own genre or whatever floats your boat, Doc, but find him. You will find him. In that place where you set the atmosphere. I wanted to get her to keep on playing, because it's easy to preach with her just playing in the background. I realize that you're probably ready to be done, and that's fine, and I'll just preach on. Set the atmosphere. I didn't bring my shovel in today, but there's no need going down to dig until the atmosphere is set. I'm not saying you got to feel like doing things for God before doing them, but I'm saying in setting the atmosphere, he sought God. He said, bring me a musician. I want to hear from heaven. He sought him. And in that I realized I'm not just working for him or living for him. I'm working with him and living with him. See the difference there? The terminology, it changes everything. And so the atmosphere changes. And all at once, you know, there's just a difference. And then we come to the place to today. And now, here's the good news is I think there's only like 2 points in today. Is that okay? That was a long recap. Oh man, I thought it'd be a shame to roll through this atmosphere thinking it was just a few little jabs and then move on, because it's something much deeper. And so the atmosphere is set. I'm going to say, God come, God come, God come. And then he comes. And then he says this. He said, thus saith the Lord, make this valley full of ditches. Thus saith the Lord, ye shall see no wind, neither shall you see rain. Yet that valley shall be filled with water, that ye may drink, both ye and your cattle and your beasts. And this is but a light thing in the sight of the Lord. He will deliver the Moabites also into your hand. Make this valley full of ditches. Make it full. You know what God's saying? He shows up, the atmosphere's changed, and don't just keep reading on up there because you get ahead of me. Don't do that. Well, first off, you're like, how on earth could you follow anything with that chicken scratching? That was just the risk I took today. But so God comes. Remember the times you prayed for him to come, Lord, come, come, come. I feel so dry. I feel like a desert place. Or you're in the midst of it and the struggle's on, the hardship's on. You're in the middle of a trial and a struggle, and you say, God, come. And he comes. Hallelujah. And we're basking in it, and it's rich. And God comes here, and He's going to meet the need. But God looks across the way at these kings, and He says, look, it's your move. Your move. Your turn. You ever have somebody look at you and say, oh, it's your move. It's your turn. God looked at these kings through the prophet, and He says, it's your move. Go make this valley full of ditches. It's your move. You've heard from heaven. God's come. He's moved. He's saturated the atmosphere. The hand of the Lord came on the prophet, and the prophet looks at the men and says, now, go make this valley full of ditches. So we just stand and look at the prophet. We think, oh, that's good truth, brother. That's good preaching. No, absolutely not. We grab our shovel and we go down into the valley to dig. To dig what? Well, to dig ditches in a low place. Think about that. The valley was a low place. And so now they're digging ditches in a low place. I don't know if it's easy to dig ditches in a high place or not, because I never really had the desire. I'm usually just so happy to be there. I'm smelling the flowers, looking at the trees, in the high places. But in the low place, He says, I want you to dig ditches in the low place, in the valley. And so they get their shovels and they go out to dig. God says this, don't look for wind, don't look for rain. He said, you won't see it coming along that way. It ain't going to come the way you think. And how many can testify in here that when God moves and God comes lots of times, it's not in the way we was looking for. It's not in the way we was even praying for, but He still comes. I didn't see the rain, I didn't see the wind, but God came. He came and He done what He said He would do. God said, don't look for it there. You're not going to see it there. It's going to come, but it's not going to come through the rain. It's not going to come through the wind. Okay, who done the digging? Who done the digging? I think everybody done the digging. Now, you may not agree with me. Maybe you think the kings just stood over and watched everybody else dig. But I think they all had to get along. I think everybody had a shovel. Everybody was digging this thing out. And the more I looked into it, and the more I read what different ones had to say, and some of the old commentaries and different things, some of them say that they was in a valley of a riverbed that had dried up. And so what they were doing was, they was stepping off the riverbed, and they was channeling, digging little trenches off of the riverbed over, just all over the place. So, here Sam, you dig for yours, I'm gonna dig for mine, and here you dig for yours, and you dig for yours. We're all just digging little trenches off this low place. Is anybody awake in here? We're all just digging trenches off this low place, off this dry riverbed, just digging these little trenches off of it. He said, make the valley full of ditches. Well, we're digging them out, we're digging out these little trenches. Here's the thing. They were digging thirsty, they were digging tired, and they were digging weary. Oh, that's not even fun to say, is it? That's kind of a downer in itself. They were digging, they was tired. I mean, they've already walked all this distance. They're tired, man. They're tired. You know what? They just want to get a shower and go to bed. That's all they want to do. I just want to get a shower, something to eat, something to drink, and just go to bed. Anybody else ever had that feeling? I just want to go to bed. And so they're digging and they're tired, they're weary, they're thirsty, they're hungry, they're wore out, and now it's time to dig. That just does not make sense to me, does it you? I mean, they don't even sit right. I don't even know how to put that into perspective. But that's the moment that God, it wasn't the kings pulling out a whip and whipping their people and saying, dig. This was God, the creator of everything, the lover of their soul, the one that's too right to be wrong and too good to be bad. That one looked at them and said, in your weary, thirsty, tired shape, dig. That's a lot to swallow, ain't it? That's a lot to swallow. I want you to dig here. I want you to dig now. I want you to do this in this low place. And the more I'm involved with Him, and the more, the further along that I go, I realize that indeed that's usually the times where He does the greatest work either around me or in me, is when I'm just feeling like I'm wearied out, and he's saying, okay, so now let's dig. Now let's dig. And I know this is not this is not inviting. I know this thought, even of digging. I mean, we don't want to dig. It's not inviting. It's not all inclusive. You know, come on down, dig. It's just not that. And so I'm not going to try to make it that. Because listen, it's not going to be easy in these moments. Will it always be this? No, we're going to come to it in just a minute. But at this juncture, at this crossing, this was it. And you say, where's God's will? Well, we're standing in it. We're standing in it. This was God's will. He allowed the water all to be gone. He allowed the wandering in circles. He allowed them to come down to the problem. He allowed the weird moment. He allowed the musician to be called. Are y'all with me? He allowed this moment to happen. Well, find God in all this. Well, we're standing in it. We're standing. Find God's moment. You're in it. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be simple. It's not going to be this thing where, okay, so if I could just energize myself a little, I'm going to get over this thing. No, it's going to take some digging in and then saying, okay, God, this seems dumb. This seems silly. And everybody's looking at me. And I feel weird. I feel crazy. I don't feel like this maybe, I don't see even how this could work. But I'm gonna go ahead and do this thing because this is how you want me to dig. Because there's a promise on the other end that says if I'll dig, you'll fill this valley full of water. It won't even come from rain or wind and these things, but if I'll dig, you'll fill this full of water. You know what it could be? Now listen, you're just got to roll with me, okay? Because I don't have time to try to evaluate faces and to make adjustments and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to preach to you, all right? If whoever's going to hear this later, whoever's here right now, I'm just going to preach to you. Now, I'll be mean to you, I'm going to preach to you. Listen, it's not going to be simple. If something has happened and it's caused the joy to depart, if something has happened and the glory and the blessing of God for some reason is very distant, now there's sometimes the devil comes my way and he brings up all these accusations and this stuff and he says, Matthew, blah, 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 and I got to sort through that because all at once I get caught up in him and all the different people that might be disappointed in me or not want to hear me or not want to come around me and all that kind of stuff, and I'll get stuck there. So I'm not talking about that. Are you listening to me? I'm not talking about false accusations and messages from the devil. But there are moments in our lives where somehow the devil tricks us. We get off track and off kilter. And I'm not saying it has to be like this. If it's not like this for you today, do not jump in this equation. Listen, you stand firm and strong, because there are moments in my life where that is not the case, brother. I know things are well and they are good, and I've done what he said and walked with him and followed him, and the glory's on my heart and I stand there. And we should teach our kids to stand there. That's good preaching, brother. Thank you so much for noticing. I've been at youth revivals and watched them over and over and over and over and over have to get saved 25 times before they ever get grounded. We need to get somewhere, get our Bibles open, and teach our kids they can believe on Jesus Christ and walk in the light and go all the way to heaven that way. Woo! Good preaching. Thank you so much. It will have to happen over and over. But I want you to know today, too, in balancing that out, there are moments the devil will trick God's people and trick those that are wanting to do good, get them caught up in a mess and tangled up in some relationship or tangled up in some addiction or tangled up in some problem or tangled up in some doubt and defeat where they're just wanting to get up and walk away. I want you to know something. It's not going to be easy to get out of that. It's not going to be a little jumping this or that or making a little decision. You know what's going to have to happen? We're going to have to rub our nose on an altar somewhere, or shut ourselves in a bedroom somewhere, or shut ourselves in and pull off beside the road somewhere in a car, lock our doors, and turn the music up or turn it off, whichever one, and say, God, it's me. I've got to have your help. I'm so sick of this. I'm ready for it to be done and over and gone. And we're going to have to let God hand us a big giant pair of scissors and reach in and cut that thing loose and let it go and say, God, that hurts so bad, but I believe you. I trust you. And I promise as you walk with him and you grow with him and you go with him, things will get good and better. Oh, I remember the moment the night I prayed through and God reached in, handed me the scissors, and I pulled all the cords together and I just snipped them things and cut all that addiction loose and all that mess, and God saved me. New life filled my lungs. I remember that moment. But the next morning, the devil showed up, and it was so hard. The next morning, I felt like I couldn't go through the day without pills. I felt like I couldn't go through the day without sucking something up my nose. And the devil was just barking at me, and the people was in my driveway. But listen, day by day, it got richer and better, and I realized I could live without dope, I could live without alcohol, I could live without sex outside of marriage. I realized I could live with these things, and it was good. Woo! Yes! And that's what it may be. I'm not saying yours is any of those things. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's something the devil's got us stuck in. I want you to know, dig. Just dig. Dig, dig, dig. Rub your nose on the altar till the glory hits your soul. Dig, dig, dig. Because God has promised, if we will dig in there and do what He said, the water will come. The water will come. It's coming. It's coming. God keeps His promise. Scroll on down, don't mind. It came to pass in the morning when the meat offering was offered that, behold, there came water by the way of Edom, and the country was filled with water. You know what? It was a deciding moment. It's exactly what they've been praying for. It's exactly what they've been looking for. It's what they've been digging for. But listen, friend, they weren't even worried about the victory. They weren't even worried about the Moabites. They got so caught up in what was going on in their sudden distress and their sudden situation of being out of water that they weren't even worried about the Moabites anymore. They just wanted to live. They just wanted to live life. They just wanted to let some things happen to get them back to the place where they felt like they could make it through. That's all they wanted at the moment. And all at once they dug the ditch. I don't think they even dug all night. Now, you may disagree. You say, well, the valley had to be full of ditches and they had to dig on. Well, fine, dig on. But I want you to know something. Here's the way I feel about that. I feel like He handed me a shovel and He gave me this little area, and I'm pulling a trench off of this dried up riverbed, and I'm pulling and I'm digging and I'm digging, and I can tell it starts here, so I got to join it up here, and I got to dig it across and dig it across and dig it here, and then all at once, you know what I feel like? Now, one man said, God will feel as much as you dig. And I agree with that. But I do also believe this, that God asks things of us. And it's not always more. I believe it's this, and this. In that, there are some times when I'm in a project, and I do that. We got this thing at work called finding done. What's finding done? Well, it's not this, and this, it's this. And there's a moment when that's done. That's answered. That's happened. It's done. And I believe it's that way. I believe there came a moment when I was digging, and all at once, you know what? I had done my part. And that was done. That was done. And you know what that does? That relieves a lot of this pressure off us. That all at once somehow the devil tricks us, and the will of God turns into an impression or oppression of the enemy. Are y'all with me? Are you with me? And so I believe there came a moment they dug and they set their shovel aside and they just kind of rested. Rested in what? They rested over one of the promise of God, and they rested in their answer in digging. I want to be so careful to stay away from they rested in their work, or they rested in their, you know what I mean? I want to stay so careful not crossing over into that. But they did have to do something, did they not? How can you dig without digging? How can you dig without digging? They had to dig, but they were digging in the promise of God that He'd given. I remember there came a moment they set their shovel aside, and I believe they was tired and thirsty, hungry, weary, lost in the wilderness. And then I believe they had to just sit down there and wait just a minute, because morning was about to break. And when morning broke, God had filled that whole valley full of water. Filled the whole valley full of water. And all at once, and I don't want to get onto this until I have to catch this other thing real fast, but all at once, God had come through. And not only did He come through on that, and I'll bring us back to just a second because it is rich. But the Moabites gathered their armies. And they make their way down there to fight with these three kings and their little scraggly armies they pulled together. And when that great army looks out over that valley, that low place, and the water has covered it, God, in His richness, causes the morning sun to shine on that water. The water that you had your hands in. The water that you had a hand in. Are you with me? The water that you had a hand in. Say, well, I don't want to take any credit for anything. Well, you're going to have some trouble with that, because there are moments when we realize that we do what God has told us to do, and His promise links up with that and creates this beautiful thing. And the sun shines on the water that you dug the trench for. And it looks red. And somehow the Moabite army gets in their head that we've all been fighting with one another and killed one another. So they come down to the spoil. And when they get there, this army of these three kings rises up and smites the Moabites because they're not even ready for battle. And all at once, this great army, you say, well, do you really believe that the Moabite army was great? Yes, I do. Because the king of Israel did not want to go fight him by himself. Judah didn't want to go fight him by himself. Edom didn't want to go fight him by themselves. They was all afraid of his oppression. And even together, all three of them didn't want to go. They was hesitant about going even together. So it was a great enemy. But all at once, God shines light on a pool of water in a valley. And the army of the enemy thinks it's blood, and they come down, and so we're not ready for battle, and so this little army wipes them out. Does anybody else think that's kind of weird? But come on, you're about to have to sleep. I'm 3/4 starved out, really super thirsty, and ready to quit. But I don't want to stop too soon. And if you want to let that go, that's fine. Next time it kicks off, just let it. But I don't want to quit just right here, because it wiped them out. This little army, God used it and it wiped them out. Just wiped it out. Brought the victory. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I don't know if the victory is something that's so foreign to us that it don't make us happy. But the victory, something about the victory within the human heart, walking in it, living in it, loving God, and Him loving us, and living and feeling and thrilling our lives. Something about the victory that is so wonderful, isn't it? And, I mean, it's not just a concept. It can be a reality of living in that victory. God brought it. God said, the prophet said, this is a light thing unto the Lord. This is just a small thing for God to do. But I want to go one place in closing. When they dug and found water, you know what it done? And God brought the water, I'm sorry. You know what it done? It affected everything in their lives. Number one, do you realize how satisfying it was to feel the calluses on my hands and the blisters? You know, because digging is hard. I've got some blisters from digging before. As I'm drinking that water and feeling these blisters, and the water is satisfying. It satisfies me. You know, I realize something lately. If my life is tough and hard and a burden constantly, you know, there's probably something a little out of kilter. I'm not saying there's not hard things to do. I'm saying within my heart, within my mind, within my life, if things are hard and tough, and everybody around me is a burden, and everything is so bad constantly, you know, I'm probably in need of a morning sun on the water that God's brought by the way of Edom. I don't even know where that come from. I tried to look it up. I don't even know where that come from. Well, it come from God. I can't even tell you where it came from, but I see the evidence of it. And I'm drinking from it, and it is satisfying something in my soul. Maybe you are. Maybe you're sitting here today and you're fully satisfied in yourself. Well, that is very interesting, because I haven't really met one person yet that's self-satisfied or self-sufficient. Oh, once God brought satisfaction, and then it went to their animals, Then it went to their men. Then I thought, you know what? Whether they contained in some skins or water bottles, and took the water back with them, or they didn't. Because man, that'd been pretty cool. I don't want to take some back to kids, but you'd be like, listen, you are not going to believe this. Check this out. So I don't know if they carried it back or not, but it's irrelevant. Because it don't matter if they carried it back or they didn't. It infected everybody back home because it brought them home. It affected everybody back home because it kept the Moabite army from running up in the town, in the home, and ravaging their family and destroying their lives. It affected everything. I was in a study yesterday afternoon, man, let me see it, man. That water, that miraculous event that God performed, affected everything. It touched everything. I think that's where God's been taking us this whole time, in this series of digging it out, digging the dirt out of wells the enemy's put in there, digging in the valley in the low place. For 2 weeks now, we spent 1 week trying to get to the valley, and now today we're in the valley, we're digging this thing out. God sent the water. You say, why? Because He's trying to tell us that it will touch everything. It will affect everything. And I'll spend as much time on and with Him and thinking of Him. I've got to do something else. Thinking of Him and purposefully cultivating my relationship with Him. It will affect everything. The water of God. And Jesus said it'll spring up in their belly. It'll flow out of them. It's no more a valley in a low place and ditches. Now it's a river within the belly, within your belly. Spring it up, and God's trying to remind us that it will touch everything. It's good. Everything. You know, if Hollywood hasn't taught us anything, you know, filmmaking and movies and the art of making the unreal seem real, and the smoke and mirrors hasn't taught us anything. It's taught us this, that just as these people in the Bible, different ones, money is never going to solve the need and meet the need inside our heart. It's never going to do it. Say, Brother Blankenship, well, I can test that idea. Okay, but while you're contesting it, just remember that I can name you one after another famous people that have committed suicide, taking their own lives. Now, whether they fell into sin and done something horrible that they couldn't, once it come out, they couldn't confront the world about, or they never found satisfaction in all those things, became unhappy, and ended there. Money, fame, popularity, none of those things can meet that need. And down through time, we've discovered the only thing that can really meet the need of the human heart is a relationship with the very one that created them. You know, when I look outside this place, or I go out our front door or into the car, I just see one after another that is so broken. So broken. I see the ladies walking down the street, just looking into cars and people trying to get their attention. Me and Maya, the other day, she's like, I know that lady's trying to get that man's attention to try to sell themselves away. And my heart just hurts. Because I know the answer to that problem. I do. You say, well, Brother Matthew, they're homeless, or they're addicts, or this or that, or maybe even some in here today are going to listen, and then there's a deficit. There's a deficit, and it's not been dealt with. Let me tell you something. We are on the right track today. This is it. This water that flows from the fountain, this is it. This water that God brought from the way of Eden, wherever that came from, this is that. She's walking down the street, and I thought, if I could just get her to realize that God created her, that He loves her, and that He wants to redeem her, and what she's looking for in these men, and what she's trying to look for in this momentary high, what she's looking for in that can be found sustainably in Christ and in our Creator. I know the answer for that. And I hope you all can sense and see and feel it here. It's not a cast down or a looking down and say, I know the answer for that. Shame on you. No. It's a lowly, almost kneeling to wash the feet, looking up, saying, I know the answer. You know, I'm just going to get so bold to say it. All of you are dealing with things. Listen, this is the answer. This is the answer. If I had a beer, I'd look at Matthew and I'd say, Matthew, this is the answer. It's not going to be a put off till next week and let's revisit this thing, because I'm that guy. I'm that guy that don't want to burden anybody or cause anybody to be out in any way, and so I'll bring comfort to you over my own detriment, to my own detriment. But it's not going to be into putting it off till next week, or putting it off till this changes, or that gives, or that comes around, or I get this taken care of. No, God said, I want you to dig here. I want you to take your shovel back over there. He said, I want you to dig here, this valley. I want you to make this low place the place. And I want you to dig right here. Dig, and then I want you to stop and wait, because when the morning sun breaks the horizon, you don't even know it. But that's going to bring the answer. The water's going to come. The victory's going to come right in behind it. It's coming. And glory to God, it comes to those in need. That's where it comes to. Jesus Himself said, the whole don't need a physician, the sick need a physician. Broken need a physician. The ones that's physically messed up, the ones that's spiritually messed up, the ones that's mentally out of sorts, the ones that's despairing in heart, they need a physician, they need the answer, they need the water. And that, if that day is you today, then I want you to think about this reality. God said it's just a light thing. God says this isn't hard for Him. He's just been waiting on us to get up with Him. God didn't go to them, they come to Him. How backward is that? The king don't go to the prophet. You know, the prophet, when he's got a word, he goes up to the king in the story, so to speak, protocol. But it flipped protocol. And the kings went looking for the answer, even though they were the kings. God says He's the answer. He says He's got the solution. He says it's a light thing for Him, and that He's been waiting on us to come to Him. Listen, young people, the greatest thing you'll ever do is stop. At some point in your life, not because mommy and daddy said so, or and I'm trying to quit, and mama and papa said so, or because you seen this or you seen that, or you was moved by some song, and all those things are great, and they can be the platform of a moment in your life where you stop, make an about face, and turn your face toward heaven and toward Jesus Christ, looking full in His face and who He is, and saying, I believe You, I'm going to live for You, I trust You to forgive me of sin and cleanse me within, and I want to walk with You. And then do that day by day. And if you slip up along the journey and something happens, you don't run from Him, you go to Him. That's good preaching, brother. Thank you so much. because one day we will be gone. We will. What would you do? What will you do then? Maybe that's even good for the adults. What will you do then when there's nobody to lean on? Now, God will probably put somebody in your life. Always be somebody to help you. But what will you do when there's nobody to say, hey, you need to get up for church? What will you do when there's nobody to say, hey, don't listen to that? That's not good for you. What will we do when there's nobody to say, hey, we shouldn't be in this place? What will we do when there's nobody to encourage us? There's nobody to lift our spirit or try to speak something into our lives. But we've got to do it on purpose. We've got to dig for it right there in the valley where we are. I like to think we'll dig. I like to think we'll find Him for ourselves and not another. And let God meet our needs. I preached way too long. Let's be standing.